Welcome back to the workshop. Nothing terribly exciting today. I think it's time to clean up these cables. So we need some sort of tunnel to go over them and a bulkhead fitting with some nice rubber grommets. I think we'll start with the bulkhead fitting.
There we go. Check here,
Okay, I'll admit that went off the rails a little bit. That was a lot of work for what is effectively 2 grommet holes. But scrutineers love looking for holes in firewalls, so I wanted to make this look as pro as possible. And also obviously noxious fumes inside the cabin is not a great thing either. So the idea is we'll weld this to the chassis, and then later on when we come to seal the whole thing up with a nice big aluminium sheet, we'll cut a little hole out that'll get pop riveted to this little bracket, and then we'll have a nice little removable grommeted bulkhead for the cables. So weld that in, and then we can come back to the inside of the car and look at covering it all up with a nice tunnel. Started off as such a simple idea, just clamp a couple of angle line sections in off the 2 chassis rails to square up a little bulkhead. But someone's put a roll cage in the car, so the top clamps wouldn't go on properly. And then there's big MIG beads on the bottom chassis rail, so I had to space the whole lot off by 2 mil with little aluminium spacers, which I kept dropping because I don't have 4 hands. And now I've got so many clamps in there holding the whole thing together, I'm not going to be able to weld it. Urgh! Okay, finally got that welded and put the 400 clamps away. Now we need a similar little frame on the inside for the inside bulkhead to meet up to. So it needs a flange around there that we can pop rivet the bulkhead to, and then some little return lips for our tunnel to clip down over the top of. This is a section of the channel I'm going to use, and I'll have a little angled lip coming up, so we need the return lip on here to have the same angle. It needs to be 85 mil high. Stay. and the width of the inside of our channel. Fairly simple job, I hope, and I'm going to do my best to stay away from the lathe and the mill so we can actually get this done. If anyone else is making one of these and they need a right-hand side piece, let me know. I made a spare. Wasn't too painful. Let's fit it to the car. Another super convenient weld position. Got the earth clamp again. So for all my bitching and moaning, that's come up pretty good. So now we just need a bit of channel with a little kick up to meet our return. So we need a total length of 495, but we need our little ramp, and because that's on an angle that needs a bit of extra length, so I've added 20mm to that, which is heaps. Cut that off on the bandsaw, and then this is the 495 mark, so we'll cut up here, along here, and then cut down here and lift that section up. That's the plan anyway. So we've got our bend line squared up there. So we're just going to use that to square it up the edge of the bench. And then our magic 1, 2, 3 block, because it's metric, slides in there perfectly. And then we'll get this gigantic clamp in here. Clamp that down. Go. Clamp that down, clamp it down. Clamp down. And we can remove our square. And rather than look at the angle, we know we need to come up 85, so once that tip hits the bottom of our height gauge, we've bent it far enough. Swing a bit of an arc, isn't it? Then we'll just bend it. Bang, that'll do. Nice. Quick check in the car. That's looking pretty good. So now all we need is some little infill sections for the sides and then work out an overcomplicated way of mounting it to the tunnel. But before that, this. So a small jump in time, but we have our little fillets welded in. And I've also welded in a couple of little standoffs with some M5 threads tapped into the top. And our little cover just fits on there like that. Now for now, I am resisting the temptation to drop the hole saw through here and add a couple of beverage holders. You You'll also notice that our little bulkhead grommet holder has magically shifted across. Whilst I loved having it in the centre, I was having a safety beer and admiring my work the other night, and I came to the conclusion that the shifter cables were just getting a little bit too close to the exhaust. And actually, when I was originally designing this little mount, I had intended on it being offset like that, but when I fitted it up, I got all excited that I could get it into the centre. My OCD took over and I welded it in place. But a few sleepless nights and I decided that it was better off shifted over. Much more space to the exhaust, and it also means the cables run in a sort of more comfortable arc. So anyway, that's complete. I think whilst we're dealing with the Firewall bulkhead sort of situation, we might run a little channel from here to here, because we need to make like a step in the Firewall because the belts need to go through here. So this side will be sort of double skinned, and it'll come in under here with a single skin behind the harnesses. I'm thinking a little 1mm folded up sort of channel section. So let's go and make that. So here's our homemade bit of RHS, 1mm thick, a nice lightweight section. So we'll clamp it in here, get it level, and then trim off those sides and weld it in. Fairly happy with that, so we'll just mark the angle that we need. And go and cut it 10mm too short. Okay, all welded up and looking good. That's given us a couple of nice flanges, one on each side, for our two aluminium firewall panels to be mounted to. It's also given us a tiny little parcel shelf. Maybe we could mount some miniature speakers there for our stereo system. I've also added a couple of little gussets, one in each corner. If these weren't here, the aluminium panel sort of would end up with a point here that wasn't really sealed against anything. So now I can sort of put a chamfer on that panel, pot rivet through there, and know that everything is sealed up really nicely. While we're on a roll trying to seal up this section of the car, I think we'll go back into the cabin and finish off something that's been bugging me for a while. And that is this section in here. We've got part of the old roll cage in here. We'll call it a chassis rail now. It mounts the door latch to it, so it gives the door latch something really solid to close to, and then comes back down to this chassis rail down here. So we've got this weird combination of a curve for the door opening with the fiberglass, and then the chassis rail, or the old roll cage, which has a bend in it and two straight sections. And unfortunately, it is inside of this curve. When I got the car, it had a big formed fiberglass panel that sat across the back of the firewall with these two curved sections. So I cut them out and I thought I'd just fit them in here. And I spent quite a long time shaping them, but because that bit of roll cage sits closer to the inside of the car, it doesn't actually come up to this lip. I thought I could live with it with a bit of a rubber filler, the door rubber here to fill this space, but it's driving me insane, and it's worse on the other side, and I think I just need to remake something from scratch. So my first idea was to form a complete panel out of aluminium, something along the lines of this, and I made one of these up for each side of the car. Follows the curve of the door frame, has a little pocket in it to fit the roll cage bar that sort of protrudes into the car, and a little flange on the other side. A fairly complex little panel, but definitely doable. But as I was sort of making it, I'd realised I'd cheated a little bit, and I'd started to sort of move the cardboard around in a way that the aluminium wasn't going to follow, and that's a bit of a trap when you're making cardboard templates on a 3D structure. It's very easy to sort of manipulate the cardboard in a way that would be very hard for the aluminium to follow. So after making those templates, I decided against that option. I also didn't like this pocket. It sort of looked like I was trying to hide something in the back there, and it just didn't work. So unless I change my mind in the next 5 minutes, what I'm going to go for now is a steel section that fits up in there like that. So this is just a single curve that butts up against the tube and then comes down to the floor. Because it's steel, that means I can just put a couple little spot welds along the edge, and then we can smooth that over with some seam sealer. And that covers up that section nicely. And then it's a relatively easy job then to make just a little aluminium section that comes into here and follows the roll cage bar, because then we've got some sort of straight bar work for the aluminium panel to follow, and this steel section then takes care of all these crazy complex curves. So that's the plan now. Let's cut this out of some 1mm steel and see how it looks. First panel cut out and bent up into shape, and it's looking okay. I didn't cut the contour for this side. That was to allow plenty of material for making some adjustments if required. Obviously they weren't required. I definitely didn't spend the last 20 minutes running backwards and forwards to the linisher to remove small amounts of metal to improve this contour. But all looking good, so I'll just run a texture on the back side now to follow the contour of the door opening, and that side will be ready to be tacked in. And it's in, and I think it's come up really nicely. I've grabbed the door rubbers that came with the car and just pushed them over the seam to have a look, and yeah, very happy with the result. I'll still run some seam sealer along this edge just to sort of blend it in a little bit and cover the spot welds. And I've repurposed my CAD model and made it a much simpler little panel that I'll bolt in there. I'm going to make this little section removable because I need to get to the nuts on the other side of the door latch. So I think that is a pretty good place to finish up. So I apologise, I know this was a bit of a dry episode. Panels and firewalls aren't that exciting, but they are a bit of a requirement. I'm in the process of designing the rather large fuel tanks we'll be needing, and that will be the next episode. So put your safety beers in the fridge, because I reckon that should be a bit of fun. Until then, thanks for watching.